It's Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers with tips and advice on landscaping and gardening. Here's Fernando Martinez.
Yes, indeed. I am here, and thank you for tuning in and joining it with me along here on this Patio Side Chats this week. I have a good topic I've been excited to talk about. It's something that comes up quite a bit when I go out on estimates and talking about people's landscaping and what to do and how to kind of, fix things up and revamp the yard, or if it's a new area, how are we going to get around? And it's pathways. So there's a lot of different applications for pathways. So I thought as a topic for themselves, it would be a good idea to really kind of go through all the nuts and bolts of what a pathway, what you can make it out of, how you use it. And we should put a lot of thoughts. I think sometimes pathways are just kind of forgotten about. Maybe they're on the side of a house or a trash area, or in areas that aren't as used, or if you're taking out a lawn and you want pathways through a garden, and how to do that. So one thing that comes up quite a bit, and it's kind of the most reasonable as far as cost goes, is this DG, or what they call decomposed granite. So I wanted to go a little more in depth and talk about what decomposed granite is, what you should expect from it, and how it kind of works and acts as a pathway. And I also want to talk about concrete. A lot of the pathways are done in concrete, and you think like, well, I want a trash area, pour concrete, So we can talk about the advantages, disadvantages of that. Pavers, of course, probably the top most beautiful thing you can do, and it is the top cost as well, most expensive thing. But so it just kind of depends on what you're trying to do. There's other ways of doing walkways with rock, pea gravel, flagstone, stepping stones, and probably towards the end of the show, I want to talk a little about lighting the pathways too. So let's dive in and start talking about this decomposed granite. Some people know what it is. Some people have heard of it, or maybe don't have any idea what it is. Kind of a morbid sounding thing, decomposed granite. And mostly we shorten that name anyway to the acronym DG. And so, yeah, basically to take the mystery away, what it is it's granite rock. Starts out as boulders, and they dig it out of the mountainside and they crush it. And you can get rip-rap size, 3 to 6 to 8 inch size rocks. They make 1.5 inch. They send it through a series of screens, and they get all the 1.5 inch rock. Anything that won't pass that screen, if it goes through the next screen, it's 3/4 inch granite rock. So if you've ever bought 1.5 inch or 3/4 inch granite rock, that's just decomposed granite in its rock form. And then they have even goes down to a 3/8, which is really small. It passes through that final 3/8 screen, and anything that keeps going through that isn't stopped by that 3/8 screen, it just gets down to fines, and they keep crushing it until it turns into a soil-like material. So it's very small, and it is the same granite boulders that it started out as. It's just crushed down. So you will see rocks in the decomposed granite. Now, granite is a type of rock that has sharp edges. So there's nothing round about it. It's not like river rocks that have been, tumbled through the river and have these nice smooth edges. Granite is the absolute opposite of that. It's very sharp edges. Even the small little grains of decomposed granite have sharp edges, and then the rocks, and they get stuck in your shoe. If you have wood floors in your house, probably not a good idea to have it anywhere near the house. So at least if you were to walk on it, and by the time you get back to where you're going to go into the house with wood floors, you would either, check your shoes for any little granite rocks that would still be stuck in there that could scratch the wood floor. So I think that really is one consideration. Number one, to determine whether you want to use decomposed granite as a pathway or not, is whether you have wood floors and what the proximity is to the house. So the really good thing, there's a couple really good things about decomposed granite. Number one, it doesn't cost very much. It's about the same price as a yard of bark. And it's pretty easy to work with. So as a do-it-yourself project, you're not going to have to pour a concrete walk or take on this paver project or flagstone and lay it and level it and tamping and all this stuff. Decomposed granite will allow water to percolate through it. So in that way, it's kind of good. You don't have to worry too much about drainage, and it's pretty simple for you to install it yourself. I would recommend compacting it. It's pretty, if it's a decent size pathway, it can be kind of hard to do it by hand, but if it's a small area, you can just get a hand tamper and tamp it. If it's a larger area, it's a long pathway, you're going to want to rent a vibroplate, which is a machine with a big plate on there that vibrates just like it sounds, and it will compact that DG, and it will compact, and it will get really hard. And the longer it's there and the more you walk on it, the harder it gets. So, and the other good thing is that it looks natural. So it kind of makes sense in a garden area, around planter beds, areas that aren't going to get used very much, but you want to not have to walk across dirt or bark. It's kind of nice, and it's got a nice tan color to it. There's a couple different colors. I've seen like a blonde, which is a really light tan, and then they have the darker tans. Kind of depends on what's coming out of the mountain that week, and they're processing it and crushing it, and it just, there's different areas where they can source the decomposed granite. There'll be slightly different colors. I've even seen green decomposed granite, which is really cool. It's kind of a chalky greenish blue. So we get asked about it a lot because of the price point and the natural look of it, and we use it quite a bit. But again, there's just some hesitations. If you're expecting it to be a concrete walk, it's not going to be that. It's not going to be pavers. It's not going to be that flat, smooth. There's definitely going to be rocks. They're going to be popping up. They're going to get stuck in your shoes. When it gets wet, it can get muddy. And so just, be aware of that and understand that it's completely natural, rock essentially, but just crushed to really fine. Now, a lot of people ask about edging it. So what do I border the decomposed granite with? And to me, I don't know. My opinion is that I don't like the look of decomposed granite bordered. I mean, it's because all of a sudden you're kind of going more towards a formal look, which if that's what you're going for, you can use the pathway as a formal, but you're kind of getting away from the whole thing. It's a natural product. And if you use plastic edging, God forbid, it just ends up, the plastic comes up, it gets hot, cold, expands, contracts, and it starts to look terrible. And I prefer myself no edging. You put a good 3-4 inches of decomposed granite, you compact it really hard with the machine, and you should be good to go. If a tiny bit of it sloughs off on the edge, I mean, really, it doesn't matter to me. I kind of like that look a little bit, but it's not going to go anywhere. It's not like it's running away or falling off or anything, and hopefully you're not walking right on the edge or kicking it with your shoe or whatever, because as long as you walk down the middle of the path, it should be just fine. And you can imagine like a layer of cake or something, coming up 3-4 inches of this decomposed granite, totally compacted. And then you bring bark up to that. It looks good. It's natural, no edge. You save the money from the edging. I mean, the whole idea, in my opinion, the best reason to do it is natural look, saving money. So why spend a bunch of money on edging when it's kind of the economical way of doing it. So there's ups and downs to it. That's kind of the story on DG. Concrete now for areas can make a lot of sense, especially trash areas. I go on a lot of bids where you got to roll the trash cans in and out. They usually right behind the gate on the side of a house. Decomposed granite doesn't make sense in my mind for those areas because of the wheels digging in. If it's recently rained and you try to wheel a heavy trash can down, it makes, it's going to make it tough. So concrete could make sense there. I'm not a huge fan of concrete. There's downsides to that. It cracks, looks kind of block. It's this white, really bright look to it, and it's not going to last. At some point, you'll have to replace it. Well, the good thing about DG, too, now that I think about it, is repairing aspects. If something does happen to it, you get a bucket of DG pretty cheap and fix it. Or concrete, you're going to have to take it all out and do it over again. So, but in the meanwhile, it gives you a nice place to roll, the cans. It's pretty convenient, and it's less expensive than, say, pavers. And at least you can save some money on a side of a house where, okay, if the concrete cracked, it wouldn't be the end of the world. So that's, because it comes up a lot. Access on, like maybe coming out the garage door, you're going to walk to the back patio, which could be pavers or something, beautiful there. And then when you get out to the front, you could have something different, like a little walkway or something going down to the driveway. But that side of the house, side yard, thing is where a lot of these pathways end up going, and these trash areas. Now, the top-notch product you could do would be pavers. And I do want to talk about it a little bit because there are occasions where it makes sense to do pavers and spend the money on areas that maybe aren't as used if they would be used if they were more gorgeous and more accessible. For instance, the trash can area, if you're already laying pavers right up to that area and you have to change materials and order a truck, or if it's too small of a concrete job, it can actually end up costing the same as pavers. And I've seen where, if you go right outside your garage door, if you could put a couple of chairs there and relax, or have a space, if maybe it's private there, or I don't know. I mean, if you see yourself using that side of the yard somehow, if it looked beautiful, maybe a couple of potted plants to kind of dress it up and make it feel nice, you certainly could do that. So I wanted to mention that. I did go on an estimate recently where it was the front of the house was the garage, the left side was the walk to go up to the front door, and the right side was this kind of area, like what do we do with it, where it was the trash area, and there really wasn't room behind the gates, so we had to put the trash cans there in the front and then walk down to the street, where that's actually the front of the house, and that's curb appeal. So pavers made a lot of sense, in that, mindset of, okay, this is the front of the home. We want to welcome you home. It's got to be gorgeous, got to be beautiful. We did another home in Trilogy area in Napomo, and they wanted walkways kind of through the backyard and around, and we did a combination of the decomposed granite with a paver circle. So rather than just, because you get all this drought-tolerant landscaping, take the lawn out. You can't just put all plants. It doesn't look good, in my opinion. It can actually look, kind of bad and make the area feel really small. So what we did was do a decomposed granite walkway, almost kind of a U shape around from the back patio through the backyard and then over to the side of the house. And in the middle of that, we did a big paver circle. So it was like there's like this paver patio out in the garden, and you can put, a table and chairs or a couple Adirondacks out there and have a space to go to and relax. But if we had bid that whole long walkway out of pavers as well, the price would have been quite high. So the pathway was decomposed granite, and you get out there and then you can enjoy your pavers. Then when you're, finished hanging out in that area, you can walk to the other side of the house. And it was just really nice. It had the nice color. It gives it the nice natural feel. The touch of pavers there kind of lifted the design. And then we put some really nice high-end lights that cast shadows down. They were called bollards, and they had this design on them. And I'll talk a little bit more about lighting later. But those lights, the decorative, really nice decorative lights, raised the look of the DG quite a bit, actually. And so, there's things you can do to keep the budget where it needs to be and still get something, really nice, not sacrificing design or quality. Now, so that's kind of pavers and DG. There's other ways of making the walkways, and you could do them out of rock. I've seen that done. You can pick a flat-edged rock like the granite, and there's several, different types of flat-edged rocks. They seem to pack down better, but it definitely would not be used for a trash area. It would just be something you would walk on, or, that's one of the few areas that I would put weed barrier underneath where there's no plants. We've done shows, we talk about weed barrier. I'm not a huge fan of it because they grow on the top and there's all kinds of issues with it. But in an area where there's no plants and you just want solid rock and you're going to walk across there occasionally, you can put weed barrier down and then put, again, 3-4 inches thick of rock. And if you use flat-edged rocks, they will compact and you'll be able to walk on them much easier than round stones. So, but let's say you did want to do it like a round stone. Idea would be the pea gravel. So pea gravel pathways have been around, forever. And there is something really cool about the crunch. We talk about landscaping and, the warmth of the fire pit and the lighting and the sound of the water. And you really want to, a lot of it's very visual, but sound is, you could put outdoor speakers or whatever. We talk about these things. But pea gravel, it has a very distinct crunchy sound when you walk on it. And it's cool and it feels neat. It's like an experience. And so, but now pea gravels are really round rocks. So if you put 3-4 inches of pea gravel, it's going to be like trying to walk through the beach, and as you walk through it, you're going to see your footprints left indented in the pea gravel. It'll never pack down because of the roundness of it. It's like if you had, a bunch of BBs or ball bearings and you're trying to, walk through there. It can be difficult to walk. It can be almost impossible to roll a trash can through there that's got any kind of weight to it. So here's what you do. This is the trick now. And this is kind of counterintuitive to everything I preach on this show, which is you would only go 1 inch max. And even like almost like 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch, just enough to where you can't see underneath it, and don't go any thicker than that. And then the pea gravel becomes easier to walk on. Now, I wouldn't do that right over really loose sandy dirt. You're going to lose most of the pea gravel. So again, this is kind of the inside, tricks of the trade here. You can take a Class 2 road base and use that underneath the pea gravel. So we're still going to do 3 to 4 inches of material. I would say in this case, probably 3 inches. Dig down and get the soil out of there and lowered, because there's nothing worse than putting a bunch of rock up high and then it's, going into the other, kind of flowing out and into other areas where it doesn't need to be. And put 2 inches of this Class 2 road base. Don't use decomposed granite. I don't know why people use decomposed granite as base and they compact it, but it's too expensive. The road base is much cheaper and it actually compacts better. So if you do that and you lay the whole area with this compacted Class 2 road base, you got to wet it and you got to rent the machine, and it's just a small area. You can hand tap it and just get that base really packed, and then put 1 inch pea gravel. That's a really neat look, because the pea gravel also has a look to it as well. It's kind of blues and grays and tans and little tiny little round rocks. And then you get that crunchy sound. Again, no trash cans, but it could be a nice, path through the gardens. You can edge it or not edge it. To me, it's like, again, you get a bucket of pea gravel, and if it's flowing into the planters or something, no big deal. If you want to be a little more formal about it, try steel edging. There's a thin steel edging that doesn't expand and contract. Or you can pour in place concrete curbs. You could put a paver border. It seems kind of silly, but when you're just doing rock. But if you want to do wood, if they're straight runs, pressure treated wood, it sounds like, the wood's going to rot. But if you use a good pressure treated 2x4 and lay that in the ground, it'll last 10, 15 years. And again, doesn't expand or contract. It's easy to work with, and that looks nice, and it still kind of has a kind of a natural feel with the wood. So there's some ideas there. Flagstone, another idea, and can be really cool. I personally don't like the small pieces of flagstone. So if you're going to be using flagstone for a pathway, I like those, what they call select. They're vertical on the pallets. So they're not laying small pieces all stacked up horizontally. They're really large slabs, and they can be quite heavy. You definitely going to need some help lifting them off the pallets. Some of them can weigh quite a bit. They're 2 inches thick. They can be 3 to 4 feet high, about 2 feet wide. Maybe they weigh 180, 200 pounds a piece. But what's good about that is you can take a couple steps on one piece. It feels comfortable. It has a nice concrete-ish, type feel to it, and you can lay them all out in rows. I go end to end with them so that you can just kind of, make a nice long walkway out of it. Anyway, I want to talk about a couple things not to use for walkways that I don't think are very good, and we'll talk about lighting a little bit on the other side of the break. If you miss any of this show or want to hear our other shows, check us out on our YouTube channel at Chaparral Pavers, and we will see you right on the other side of the break.
You're listening to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on California's Central Coast. Here on 1240 AM and 99.5 FM, KSMA.
Chaparral Pavers. I love to come home.com. Imagine the flickering flames and warmth of a fire pit, soothing sounds of trickling water, decorative lighting, highlighting your landscape at dusk. Driveways and patios, not only functional, but a work of art. This is what Chaparral Pavers does for your landscape lifestyle. You'll love to come home. Chaparral Pavers. Visit us now at ilovetoComeHome.com.
If you're thinking about installing a new paver patio or paver driveway, check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetoComeHome.com. Serving the Central Coast since 2001, Chaparral Pavers will work with you to get it right and complete the job to your specifications, as customer service is king at Chaparral Pavers. Paver driveways are stylish and durable and guaranteed to never crack. If your old concrete driveway or entryway is a hazardous cracking mess, it's time to call Chaparral Pavers. Go to their website, ilovetoComeHome.com. You'll find all the information you need. Check out photographs of past installations and reviews from Central Coast residents who have used Chaparral Pavers. And don't forget, all installations are guaranteed for the life of your home. So check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetoComeHome.com. Chaparral Pavers, they'll make you love to come home. Now, back to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on KSMA.
And we're back. Okay, we are talking about pathways and decomposed granite and concrete, pavers, flagstone, using rock as pathways. There's so many different things you can make pathways out of. They are an integral, really important part of the landscaping, but they're usually put in areas where you're not using it a whole lot, so it hasn't really been a focus of this radio show before, or really think, we don't think about it all the time, but I wanted to bring it to your attention and really kind of think it through so that when comes time to do those things, because it's on almost every one of our jobs, we have to address this of what to do with these sides of the homes that are, accessed infrequently, or I don't know. I mean, you say that, but even or I say that, trash areas are something you use every week, every day. Go out there, take the trash. It's the side usually of a house, or there needs to be something there. So when it comes to that, I think some of the things that we're talking about don't make sense. So in the trash cans, it's got to be either concrete or pavers. I have used flagstone for that area. We were just talking about flagstone right before the break. I wanted to kind of finish up on that. We were talking about getting the large, tall pieces, 4 feet high, 2 inches thick, maybe about 2.5, feet wide. And when you lay one down, you can take a couple steps on it. It's really nice. You can lay them end to end, so they stretch out. You get more, linear feet of walkway for your money when you lay them that way. If you want a wider walkway or you want a different look, you can, of course, turn them sideways and use a little more stones. But that's the closest feel to concrete, and without having to pour concrete. And I think, if you've got some help lifting the pieces, it's something you could take on yourself, because it doesn't take a whole lot of prep either. I would do a little bit of base underneath the flagstones. And then there's the challenge of once you get that base down, you get them laid. And I would use a level, and you've got to kind of, push some sand under each side of them to really kind of, so they don't wobble. Again, not a fan of the small pieces because they can move. And that's the biggest reason why I don't like the smaller pieces. And I'm talking about just laying them out kind of naturally. You can lay flagstone on top of concrete and treat them like tiles. That's not what we're discussing here, because if we were going to go down that route, the price is actually more than pavers, and I would just do pavers. But just laying flagstone kind of naturally, like I said, a little bit of base, compact it, level the area. We use a little bit of sand in there to nestle that piece in there so it doesn't wobble. But those big pieces weigh so much that even if you're jumping on one side of it, the stone doesn't move. And to me, that pathway should feel, nice and solid and be very usable, even if you're only using them once a month, at least, it should still feel good over there. So the last thing about the flagstone is that you have to decide what to put, in between the flagstones. And so you can use the combination of the products, because Decomposed granite is definitely something you can put in between the flagstones. Rock or pea gravel could be used in between the stones. You can do the mosses and ground covers in between. Just keep in mind, though, if you do that mossy or some kind of ground cover in between the stones, you are going to have to put water there. And mostly people don't want to put sprinklers. And it seems to look really good online in pictures. You see the creeping thyme or the Irish moss growing in between the stones. But I think especially like creeping thyme, it looks really good when it's all trimmed up and not all over the stones. But if you never trimmed it, it would just cover the stones. And if you didn't water it, the moss certainly wouldn't grow, or the thyme would be kind of suffering without water. So I don't know. I think it's probably better in magazines than it is in real life. So how many things are like that, right? So anyway, you can decide what to put in between. There is one other option, and I'll kind of move on from flagstone, is the polymer sands that we use in between the pavers. They make one for flagstone now that can go up to 4-inch gaps. So that can be an option as well. Now, I want to talk about just one thing that I really do not like at all for pathways, and that's those square 12 by 12 stepping stones, 12 inches by 12 inches. And then they're spaced out through rock or something, where along the side of a house. It's probably the only thing that I've seen where I would say, absolutely, please do not do that. They're never at the right stepping distance when you go from one to the other. And even if you could get it right for you, it wouldn't be right for somebody else. And it's like, do I walk on them? I walk on 3 of them, then I miss one. And the look is just kind of terrible too. So don't do 12-inch by 12-inch stepping stones, please. I'd rather see you go more towards pavers at that point, and you'll still have all the options. Again, if you're going to spend money on something, let's do it right. Lighting, absolutely. I love path lighting, the little path lights. You can use down lights on a fence to kind of help light that pathway, especially trash areas. I've got one lighting a bush near the trash area and one going on the shed, so you get some ambient light so you can see on the pathways at night. It is very important. Definitely think about lighting. You can check us out online at ILoveToComeHome.com. Check out our YouTube channel. You can hear this show and previous shows. So we'll see you next week.
This has been Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers. Go to ILoveToComeHome.com to find out more, or call 805-588-6917. And be sure and tune in next week at this same time for Patio Side Chats here on KSMA.